3 months ago, a judge gave my wife the kids in a $4.2 million house, calling me a man with a gambling problem. What no one knew was that hidden in my late mother's attic was a metal box, stuffed with cash, a ledger, and a USB that proved someone had been building a fake addiction profile to destroy me. My name is Michael Reyes, I'm 47, and this is how Mom's secret files flipped the karma. The clerk reads the order in a steady voice while I stand beside my attorney Aisha Khan and try to keep my breathing even. The court grants primary custody to Caroline Brooks. The court grants exclusive use and possession of the Pasadena residence valued at $4.2 million. Temporary orders to remain in effect until further hearing. March 2023, downtown Los Angeles, fluorescent lights, a packed calendar. The judge thanks counsel and moves to the next matter. Aisha touches my sleeve and says we expected temporary orders, follow them exactly. We build our motion once we have evidence. The clerk hands me 2 envelopes. One contains the stamped order. The other carries the seal of my professional board. I thank her because manners keep me from drifting. Across the aisle, Caroline confers with her lawyer, composed, efficient. We once argued about cabinet hardware and laughed in the aisle of a home store. I put that memory away. In the corridor, Aisha guides me to a bench. She reviews the order, quickly tapping each section. No unapproved contact, no messages that could be read as pressure. Keep to the visitation schedule. Document everything. We will request the documents that influence the court, especially anything about a supposed gambling profile. We will address the board notice as optics. She wants bank statements, transaction histories, and for me to keep my phone data intact. If anyone offers shortcuts, I am to ignore them and call her. I say I understand. She asks if I am alone. I nod. She tells me to eat sleepwalk before driving. Caution is your ally, Michael. Outside sun and traffic and the sound of a siren somewhere far off. I lean on a rail and let the day settle for a moment. My phone buzzes. A message from my manager at Sentinel Meridian Insurance asks for a call regarding compliance questions tied to press mentions. I pocket the phone and walk until I find a small cafe. I order water and open the second envelope. The board has scheduled a hearing for September 12, a preliminary review, because I am a named party in a case that may raise concerns about professional conduct. It is exactly as Aisha predicted. Calm language, real consequences. I email my manager. I will cooperate, fully supply documentation, and avoid tasks that could create a perception of conflict until the board hearing. He replies within minutes to acknowledge receipt, and to say the team will adjust workload temporarily. Professionalism, he writes, and I cling to that word because it is solid ground. I map the evening handoff in my head, meet at the neutral location, sign the sheet, ask the kids about classes and practice. No discussions about court, no questions that turn them into messengers. The plan is a list of small, boring steps that look like respect. The drive to Pasadena takes 40 minutes. I keep the radio off and let the freeway carry me. I think about the morning Caroline told me she was finished with the chaos of my hours and the way risk clings to insurance work. I told her stability is the point of my job. She told me the point and the feeling are not the same. Now a judge has added structure to the feeling. I park 2 blocks away because the order warns against lingering. I text that I have arrived for the 15-minute window. Proceed, she replies. The jacaranda trees dust the curb with purple. Our neighbor, Mrs. Leone, looks up from her roses and nods. I keep moving. The house looks familiar and distant at the same time. Porch lights on. The front window holds a reflection of the street. Caroline opens the door before I reach it, clipboard in hand. We will keep this brief, she says, without warmth or malice, only procedure. Of course, I answer in the same register. I step into the foyer, check my watch, and start. Hall closet first. Coach jacket from a charity run, a pair of sneakers. In the study, I slide my passport, laptop charger, and a folder of tax copies into a canvas bag. Aisha told me to avoid sentimental detours, essentials only. I follow the list I wrote after court, photographs from trips I took alone. The small wooden box of cufflinks my father gave me. I leave anything that could be argued as shared. My movements are deliberate. The smell of cleaner hangs in the air. I do not look for traces of us. Caroline remains near the door and calls out time checks. 10 minutes. 5. I nod each time. At the kids' rooms, I stop in the doorway and look without stepping inside. A stack of comic books, a watercolor taped above a desk. I remind myself that I will see them later today at the neutral site, that the best thing I can do is be steady at the handoff. I tell Caroline I am done and will sign outside. She holds the clipboard. The form is simple. Time in, time out items removed, limited to personal effects. I write my name carefully so it does not look like my hand shook. I thank her for the access. She says all schedule issues should go through counsel. We stand for a second like strangers on adjoining porches. On the steps I pause. Air cooler now, sky edging toward evening. I look at the front of the house fully, not as a litigant, just as a person who painted the trim and replaced the broken latch on the side gate. There is nothing here to take that is not on the list. There is a great deal here that I will not try to take by force. Temporary orders draw a line. They also create a path. Aisha will file the motion when the record is ready. I will keep clean books and clean language and a clean schedule. The 15 minutes are up. I nod to Caroline and walk the stone path to the gate. The lavender brushes my leg. The gate sticks unless you are gentle. I am gentle. On the sidewalk, I glance at the thin curve of a new moon and start back toward my car. I will stop at the neutral location sign and ask about homework, talk about practice, make a plan for the weekend visit. I will answer my manager and send Aisha scanned copies of the board notice and the order. I will go to bed early and wake up before dawn to run a slow mile because running turns panic into something measurable. At the corner, I look back once. The porch light is still on. The window reflects the street. It is not a signal and not a message. It is just a house. I turn the corner and keep walking. I keep moving until the street folds into another and the courthouse disappears behind traffic and jacaranda shade. The plan is simple. Get through the evening handoff, sleep, show up at work in the morning and face whatever needs facing. When I wake the next day, I dress in a suit that still smells faintly of dry cleaning fluid and drive to the Santa Clarita office of Sentinel Meridian Insurance. The lobby plants are glossy and artificial. The receptionist nods and says that Henry would like to see me when I have a moment. I say I have a moment now. Henry Calhoun stands when I step into his glass-walled office. He has the file in his hand, and the careful expression of a man who believes in process. He says the board has flagged your name and scheduled a hearing in September, and compliance wants to ensure we are out in front of any optics. He adds that he values my work and wants to keep me on projects that do not involve direct custody of client funds until this is resolved. I tell him that makes sense. I tell him I will provide transaction histories, timesheets, travel logs, anything that helps. He says that would help a lot and that he will draft a letter for the board regarding my performance and adherence to internal controls. On my way back to my desk, I run into Nadia in the hallway. She lowers her voice and says to start a clean binder with copies of everything and to keep a contemporaneous log of calls and meetings because memories blur when stress turns each day into static. She winks and says she will cover the Wednesday status meeting if I need to be at a handoff with the kids. I feel the knot at the base of my skull loosen half an inch. I sit and begin the work of proving that nothing illicit lives in the numbers. I pull bank statements for the past year and export expense reports. I print travel itineraries and flag dates when I was out of town. I type a clean summary for Henry in compliance and include a note that I will refrain from any assignments that might present a perception problem until after the hearing. Professionalism is the only currency I have control over, so I spend it carefully. That evening, I make the neutral location handoff on time. The kids slide into the back seat of my car like shy guests. We talk about small things. My son tells me practice was a mess and that the quarterback cannot read a blitz. He says it like a joke, but there is metal under the words. My daughter shows me a photo on her phone of a watercolor she started in art class. She has painted our house with soft blue shadows and left the front steps blank. I ask if she wants to add a figure later. She shrugs. We eat simple tacos in a bright place with sticky tables, and then I drive them back and sign the sheet and watch them walk toward the porch light that I used to turn on. 2 days later, a link starts to circulate in the parent group. Dolores Finch posts it with a line about community standards and the importance of protecting children. The link is to a piece on a neighborhood blog that loves scandal and yard sale announcements in equal measure. The headline says that a local father is under scrutiny for compulsive gambling and that sources suggest this is connected to a court matter. I stare at the words on my phone and feel nothing for a long minute. Then I feel everything. I type a response that I do not send. I delete it and call Aisha instead. She says to say nothing on the thread and to forward screenshots. She says we will address defamation later if we must, but that the priority is still evidence and stability. At work, Henry calls me in again. He says compliance has read the link and would like confirmation that I am not handling any disbursements. I tell him I already shifted those tasks to Tariq last week. Henry nods and thanks me for being proactive. He asks if I am sleeping. I tell him the truth. Not much. He suggests I take the late afternoon to get some air and come back fresh tomorrow. I pack my laptop and say I will log on from home if anything urgent lands. Home is a short-term rental in a building that smells like new paint and quiet hallways. I sit at the tiny kitchen table and build the binder Nadia suggested. Tabs for court, tabs for board, tabs for bank, tabs for work. I print Aisha's checklist and add it to the front. I write the words "keep steady" on a sticky note and place it where I can see it when the room tilts. That weekend, the kids hand me bits of their mood like receipts. My son says he is skipping practice because the whispers are distracting and because he does not want to answer questions in the locker room. I tell him that missing practice makes the whispers louder. He glares and asks if I know anything about how it feels to be labeled a cautionary tale. I say I know a little. He says not like this. We drive in silence. Later, my daughter places a drawing on the coffee table in my rental. The house again more detailed this time with paint strokes that look like shadows at dusk. The steps are still empty. She taps the paper once and says this is just a study. Then she changes the subject and asks if we can bake cookies next weekend. I say yes. She smiles like that is a safe answer. On Sunday afternoon, I walk to St. Andrew's where the doors are heavy and the air is cool. Father Miguel Ortiz is in the side chapel talking with a couple about a baptism. When they leave, he greets me with the kind of calm that makes you want to say everything at once. I tell him a version of what is happening. He listens and then says that dignity does not mean silence. And it does not mean shouting, it means choosing words that do not make tomorrow harder. He says to keep to the path of the law even when the path feels slow. He asks if I have people to call at night. I say I have a lawyer and a manager and 2 children who are trying to make sense of new terrain. He tells me to keep walking and to rest when I can. On Monday morning, Henry and I sit with compliance in a small room with a window that faces a parking lot. I slide the binder across the table and walk them through my summary. They ask clear questions and I answer with dates and documents. When we finish, they thank me and say they will note my cooperation in their internal memo. After the meeting, Nadia catches me by the elevator and presses a thermos into my hand. She tells me it is tea and also a peace offering for the way the week is shaping up. I tell her she does not need to do that. She says maybe I do, and she grins, and then the elevator doors close. In the evenings, the parent group keeps humming. Dolores posts a follow-up about community resilience and mentions a town meeting next week. People add comments that are mostly polite and sometimes sharp. I resist the urge to scroll before bed. I fail at that once and end up staring at the ceiling for an hour. In the morning, I run a slow mile on a cracked sidewalk near the rental and feel the panic turn into something that can be counted in breaths. Aisha calls midweek with an update. She has requested the documents that supported the allegation about a gambling profile. She wants to see exactly how it was constructed. She says again that we are on track for a motion if we can secure anything fresh. She asks about the kids. I tell her Logan is on a strike against his own team for reasons that are not entirely about football and that Arya is making art that looks like weather. Aisha says to keep the handoffs calm and to keep my phone on silent when I feel the itch to respond to provocations. She reminds me that hearings are made of paper and patience. Thursday night, a man I do not recognize stops me outside the rental and says he heard I have a problem with casinos and that he knows people who can make debt disappear. He speaks softly and leans as if we are co-conspirators. I tell him I do not need help and that I am not interested in anything he is selling. I go upstairs and lock the door and call Aisha. She says this is exactly the kind of contact to avoid and to document it in my log with time and location. She adds that people like this look for fractures and try to widen them. I write the note and drink water and stand at the window until the man is gone. By the end of April, the binder is thicker and my patience is thinner. I realize I am moving through Los Angeles like a person who is avoiding certain intersections where memories cross too loudly. The kids are polite during visits. My son asks if I think the board will take my license. I tell him the board will listen to facts. He looks at me like he is deciding whether to believe that adults can be fair. My daughter asks if we can visit Grandma's old house in New Mexico this summer. I say maybe, and then I think about it all night. The next morning, I call my aunt, who checks on my mother in Albuquerque. She says the house is dusty but intact and that the old attic hatch still sticks when it is cold. She says I should come sort through boxes before the monsoon season makes everything smell like wet cardboard. The idea lands in my chest with a weight that feels like relief. If I leave California for a week, I am not fleeing. I am cleaning out a house and clearing my head and removing myself from the immediate blast radius of gossip. I run it by Aisha first. She says to send her the dates and the address and to keep my phone on so she can reach me if something breaks in the case. She says to email Henry so there is no confusion about availability. She tells me to make sure the visitation schedule is covered and documented and to offer makeup time if the trip overlaps anything. I say I will. I email Henry and he replies that the timing is fine and that we can route any urgent client questions to Tariq and Nadia. I email Caroline through counsel about the short trip and attach the proposed makeup schedule for the kids. Her attorney acknowledges receipt and says they will respond if there is an issue. There is no issue. I spend a Saturday morning packing practical clothes and empty notebooks. I add a small toolbox because old houses always need something simple and stubborn fixed. I slide the binder into my bag and tuck the board notice into the front pocket. I glance at the calendar on my phone and feel a sharp awareness of September sitting there like a shadow. I close my bag and set it by the door. That afternoon I stop by St. Andrew's again. Father Miguel asks how the week has been. I tell him about the link and about the stranger outside the building and about the decision to go to New Mexico. He says distance is not an escape if you use it to do real work. He says to bring back what is necessary and leave what is only weight. I sit for a few minutes in the quiet and let my breath slow down. On Sunday evening, I meet the kids for ice cream. Logan says the coach expects him back at practice next week, and that he will go, but he is not going to talk to anyone who says stupid things. I tell him that is a plan with a hole in it, and that maybe he can talk to the coach instead. Aria asks if New Mexico has skies that are really that big. I tell her yes, and that if we plan it right, we can all go in the summer when the heat is honest, and the evenings smell like dust and rain. When I drop them off, I sign the sheet and nod to Caroline without adding any words that could turn into a fight. I drive back to the rental and set an early alarm. The decision is made. Tomorrow I will start the drive east. I will keep the binder on the passenger seat and the phone on the charger and a small map in the glove box because paper is a comfort when batteries die. I rinse a coffee mug and leave it to dry and turn off the light. The room is quiet. The street outside is a soft whisper. I lie down and let the plan take the shape of sleep. Morning light slid along the blinds and I woke with the kind of focus that arrives when a plan has been chosen. I loaded the binder, a small toolbox, a change of clothes, and a cooler with water into the trunk. I sent Aisha my itinerary and texted Henry that I would be reachable during working hours. I left Pasadena before the heat climbed and drove east until the city thinned in the rear view. The freeway opened into desert and the colors shifted to the honest tones of dirt and sky. I counted mile markers the way a swimmer counts strokes. Barstow Needles, the dry line of the Colorado River. By late evening, I reached Flagstaff and took a room that smelled like pine cleaner and air conditioning. I slept like a person who has promised himself that tomorrow will matter. The next day, I crossed into New Mexico. Albuquerque arrived as a long bowl with mountains at the rim and sunlight like a hard coin. My mother had kept the house even after moving into assisted living. It sat on a quiet street where chimes rattled and dogs called over fences. The key turned with a complaint and the door swung on hinges that needed oil. Inside, the air felt still and patient. I opened curtains and windows and let the dry breeze move through the rooms. The living room was a museum of practical habits. A couch with a crocheted throw folded into a square, a shelf of paperbacks, a coffee table with coasters. In the kitchen, I ran water until it cleared and found trash bags under the sink, beside a box of light bulbs and a jar of screws. My mother did not throw away anything that might one day be useful. I walked the house and made a list. The roof did not leak. The paint needed attention. The attic hatch in the hall closet stuck halfway, then gave with a dry sigh. A narrow ladder unfolded and a faint smell of insulation drifted down. I flipped the switch and a single bulb glowed. Plywood bridged the beams. Boxes labeled in my mother's careful hand lined the low eaves. I stood and listened for the scurry of animals and heard only the hum of the bulb. I started with the boxes nearest the hatch. Christmas ornaments wrapped in tissue, a shoebox of photographs in envelopes from a drugstore that no longer exists, binders full of warranties and receipts. I kept a pile for shredding. After an hour, a narrow path cut through the dust. Near the back where the roofline pinched the space low, the insulation looked disturbed as if someone had tucked something away with intention. I climbed down for a mask and gloves and came back with the small pry bar. The insulation lifted in a neat square and revealed a shallow cavity between beams. A metal case sat inside wrapped in layers of clear plastic. I set it on the plywood and peeled away tape that had yellowed at the edges. The latch was stiff, but it gave. The lid rose and the smell of old paper reached me. Inside lay bundles of cash arranged with geometric care, a ledger bound with twine, a small USB drive in a zip bag, a folder of photographs, and a thick envelope addressed in my mother's compact hand. For Michael, when you need the truth. I touched the envelope first. The letter was dated in blue ink with a slant I recognized from notes on our refrigerator when I was a kid. She wrote that if I was reading this, she was either gone or could no longer carry what needed carrying. Between 1999 and 2004, we lived under a protective identity because my father had been pulled into the orbit of a group that called itself Ravello Circle and had tried to leave. Leaving was not permitted. After the night, everything changed. A federal agent from the Marshals helped her disappear with me while the case assembled. She had been instructed to keep certain materials and to observe strict rules about how and when to contact the government again. She chose never to use those channels because quiet felt safer. Safety is a scale, she wrote, and she was sorry for the parts she could not explain when I was young. I placed the letter down and sat back on my heels. The attic bulb hummed, heat pressed on my shoulders. I tried to remember those years not as stories I had told, but as days we lived. New schools, different names on mail, the way my mother changed routes if a car lingered behind us. The way she bought what she could lift alone. Holidays held with a fierceness that turned small rooms into fortresses. The ledger was a plain notebook with columns and dates. Her handwriting tracked deposits and withdrawals that looked like paychecks and groceries and rent. In the margins, small notes referenced code names I did not know, and sometimes the words "copy held for agent." Near the back, the amounts grew larger for a short period and then settled. A final page read emergency cash held apart and a total that matched what lay in the case. $612,000 counted and banded. I set the ledger back and opened the folder of photographs. Some were Polaroids gone creamy with age. Me in a park with a haircut my mother thought was serious. A small apartment kitchen with cherry print wallpaper, a photograph of a badge on a table angled so the name was out of frame but the seal read United States Marshals Service. In another photo, a hand held a paper with numbers and a date 2001. The numbers looked like a case file. My chest tightened with a feeling that was part fear and part steadiness. I took the USB drive from its bag. It was a cheap plastic thing, heavy with purpose. I carried the case downstairs to the kitchen table. I did not want to touch the cash any more than necessary, and I did not want to leave it alone. I placed my phone on the table and opened the camera. I photographed the case as found. I photographed each item in place. I wrote a log entry with the time and the room and the condition of the contents. Then I brought my laptop, slid the drive into a port, and waited for the cursor. A single folder appeared named with a string of letters and numbers. Inside were 4 audio files and a text document. The text file read like a manual. Preserve originals. Do not email. Do not upload. Set contact only if safety is compromised or material evidence emerges. The dates ran from 2000 to 2004. I opened the first audio file. After a second of static, a man spoke in a voice that carried authority without volume. He identified his agency and used a code, and then my mother answered. Her voice was younger in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with hope. She confirmed receipt of a packet and read aloud a portion of a number chain. He repeated it and used a word I had never heard in ordinary conversation. Witsec. He read a second chain and told her to memorize and destroy. She repeated the chain. The file clicked and ended. The second file recorded a check in where he said the case had expanded and that appearing ordinary was essential. Avoid predictable routines. A car would be nearby if departure became necessary. He said naming names takes time when systems are complex and people are willing to lie. My mother asked about school for me. He said kids are resilient and that learning to read change is a skill even if it does not feel like one. The third file was the one that made my jaw tighten. He laid out what he called the playbook. The group had shifted from obvious force to financial and reputational weapons. The method fabricated patterns that painted a target as unstable or compulsive and pushed that narrative until institutions treated the target as a risk. The gambling pattern was a favorite because it created shame and paper. The goal was to make the target controllable or isolated enough to be leveraged. Do not engage. Document. Report. My mother thanked him. The file ended. I stared at the laptop and thought about a link in a parent group, a stranger near my building offering to fix casino problems I did not have, and a notice from a board that used calm words to describe a cliff. The line from then to now did not feel dramatic. It felt like a rope pulled quietly over distance. It felt like a pattern that expected to be seen. The last file was a farewell. The man said the best protection was to keep doing ordinary things and to store documents in a secure place with instructions for recontact. He hoped the instructions were never needed. If they were, I should present the material with care and ask for a specific kind of agent. He gave a name and a badge number. He said my mother had been brave. Bravery looks like patience more often than anything else. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms on the table. The house creaked the way old houses do when heat and time talk to each other. Outside, a bicycle bell chimed and a dog barked once. I looked at the cash and measured my reaction. It was not greed. It was not even relief. It was the sense that someone had held a door with both hands for years, so I could step through without breaking a shoulder. My mother had stored more than money. She had stored a map. I opened the notebook again and wrote a checklist. Photograph contents as found, inventory serial numbers if advised. Keep USB within sight. Call Aisha with an outline before contacting any agency. Ask about best practice for turning over physical evidence. I felt the urge to call immediately but made myself drink water and walk the rooms. I checked the doors and the attic hatch. I moved the case into a hall closet and placed a chair in front of it, ridiculous and human at the same time. Back at the table, I read the letter again and saw a line I had skimmed. If you ever find yourself painted with colors that are not yours, remember that paint can be washed off when you know the formula. She did not know that for me the formula would be a ledger, a USB 4 files, and a 6-letter word that explained a decade. She knew that fear lasts longer when it is hidden and shorter when it is counted. Night came and the house settled. I wrapped the USB in its bag and put it in my pocket. I placed the ledger back in the case and closed the lid. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the living room doorway where the throw blanket waited on the couch. I thought about calling Aisha and decided that sleep would make my voice steadier in the morning. I set an alarm, lay down on the couch, and watched the small red light on the smoke detector pulse. I counted the pulses until my eyes closed. I woke before the alarm with the USB in my pocket and the metal case on the kitchen table. I photographed the contents one more time, locked up, and drove downtown. At the federal building, a guard scanned the case, pointed me upstairs, and I met Deputy United States Marshal Brooke Ellison. She led me to a small conference room with a camera in the corner and laid out the plan. We would build a clean chain of custody. We would list every item, seal what needed sealing, and I would initial each step. We started with an overview while she filled the header on the evidence log. Date, time, location, my identification, verified her name printed in block letters. She asked how I found the case. I described the stubborn attic hatch, the square of lifted insulation, the cavity between beams, the plastic wrap, the yellowed tape. She wrote as I spoke, then nodded for me to open the latch. We inventoried in order. United States currency bundled approximate total $612,000. She put on gloves, sampled serial numbers from top and bottom bills, while a desk camera recorded, then sealed the bundles inside a larger evidence bag with tamper tape, time, and initials along the seal. Ledger handwritten pages with deposits and withdrawals and a last line that read, "Emergency cash held apart." She slipped it into a sleeve and sealed it. USB drive, black plastic, no branding. She asked if I had accessed it. I said I had opened 4 audio files and a text document, had copied nothing and had logged the times. She nested the drive inside a static buffer and a hard case, scanned a barcode and set it aside. Photographs, various sizes. She fanned them enough to see the surfaces, paused at the badge with the marshal's seal, then sleeved the stack. WITSEC documents copied with identifying lines masked in part. Those she labeled for restricted review. She slid the log toward me. Evidence A through E, descriptions and condition time collected. She signed, printed her name, and had me sign. My hand stayed steady. She asked about recent odd contacts. I told her about the stranger outside my building who offered casino help, the neighborhood blog. Link the parent meeting notice. She had me forward screenshots to a secure address and asked for metadata if I could pull it. I told her I could. Brooke explained why my materials mattered without drama. For years, they had tracked a network that preferred rumor and money trails over obvious force. Ravello Circle used reputational scaffolding to push institutions toward a preferred outcome. Targets often had access to financial systems, or stood where their collapse would frighten others. My facts fit patterns they had seen, which did not make my life less personal, only more legible in their files. I asked whether the numbers on the USB matched anything today. She connected the drive through a write blocker, checked hashes and metadata, and compared a string from the text file to a secure database. Her expression softened. The identifiers aligned with a legacy case. The agent named in the recordings had retired, but the file sat inside a larger archive. That link mattered. She did not celebrate. She recorded it. She stepped out and returned with Detective Ryan Cho from the district attorney team. He had a legal pad and a polite handshake. He asked for a clean timeline from last November. Travel accounts, canceled cards, anything that could carry someone else's fingerprints. I gave him dates and details. He said he would draft requests for bank records, prepaid card histories, and IP logs. Some items would arrive quickly, others would need patience. He left me his card and a short line that sounded like advice. If someone offers help without receipts, call me before you answer. Brooke gathered the sealed bags into a larger bag and closed it with evidence tape. She handed me copies of the chain of custody and a receipt. The cash would be verified and held. If it was clean, it remained mine. For now, it was context. She reminded me not to discuss the amount with anyone who did not have a legal need to know. The instruction felt heavy and sensible. She suggested I call counsel from the room so there was a precise record of what had been surrendered and when. She dialed and passed me the phone. Aisha answered. I summarized. Chain of custody completed in Albuquerque. Cash ledger photographs, WITSEC copies, USB accepted. Old case numbers matched a legacy file. Detective Cho would move on subpoenas. Aisha said this would anchor our motion to vacate in August. She asked me to scan and send my copies when I got back to the house. Her voice steadied the moment. At the door, Brooke told me to vary my route home and to call if anything looked wrong at the house. Paranoia and prudence can sound alike, she said, and I promised to choose prudence. Outside, the heat held steady over the parking lot. I sat in the car and wrote a clean log entry. Time, location, items, surrendered names, present, next steps. I drove to a copy shop, scanned the chain of custody and receipt, emailed them to Aisha, and printed a spare set for my binder. Back at the house, I locked the door, set the now empty case on the table, and filed the scans on my laptop in a folder with the date. I moved Brooke's card and Ryan's card to the front sleeve of the binder and labeled a fresh tab for subpoenas. I texted Henry that I would be offline for an hour and then available. He replied with a thumbs up and a note that compliance appreciated prompt documentation. I called my aunt to say the house was fine. I texted the kids a photo of the Sandia silhouette. My son sent a short reply that read, "Looks cool." My daughter asked if the stars were visible yet. "Not yet," I wrote, "soon." I ate a plain sandwich at the counter and made notes for tomorrow. Call Aisha at 9 to review the motion calendar. Meet Ryan in the afternoon to sign whatever needed my signature. Pull 3 months of additional bank statements in case the first batch did not cover anomalies. Ask Brooke about best practice for serial number inventory if they wanted me to participate. As twilight slid across the living room, I checked the locks again, then looked up at the attic hatch like a person might look at a closed book. The house had given me what it could. Now the weight shifted to paper and process and patience. I put the USB now in official custody but present in memory back on the nightstand out of habit. I set my alarm and lay on the couch. The quiet felt less like emptiness and more like a room holding its breath for morning. Morning light squares the wall and Aisha texts that she has connected me with a forensic accountant named Dr. Priya Shah. She plans to join by phone and Detective Ryan Cho will forward the first subpoena returns as they arrive. I brew coffee, open my binder on the table and tell myself to answer every question with dates and documents. Dr. Shah arrives with a small laptop bag and a calm manner. She says her job is to build a clean picture from messy numbers. We clear the table. I stack bank and card statements, expense reports, travel itineraries, and phone logs. She draws 3 columns on a legal pad. Voluntary data from me, compelled data from the district attorney, and anomalies that sit between what I know and what the records show. We start with my primary checking account. Paychecks from Sentinel, Meridian, rent on the short-term place, gas, groceries. She listens and nods each time a category matches the ledger on her screen. We move to my main credit card and mark work travel and personal travel in different ink. She has me pull phone location for trips so the rhythms line up. She says a rhythm lets you hear the offbeat. An encrypted link lands in her inbox. First subpoena return, a prepaid card account I have never used. It was created in November of last year and loaded in small amounts that look harmless alone and suggestive together. Loads appear on days when I was traveling. The vendor captured IP data. The loads came from Los Angeles while I was in Oxnard all day. She writes travel mismatch and draws a small arrow. We walk through December and January. A second prepaid card is created, same pattern. In late January, the first card begins topping up an online gaming wallet. The vendor logged a phone number for 2-factor checks. The number is not mine. Dr. Shah runs a quick public search. No obvious owner. She labels it as a temporary line and keeps going. She asks if anyone pitched financial advice to Caroline during the separation. I say a man named Gavin Cross surfaced last year as a family finance specialist. I never met him. I heard his name late. The timing fits our first serious arguments. She writes his name in the margin and underlines it. Another return arrives. Different prepaid provider, same echo. Card created in early December, loads tied to a device in Los Angeles, small cash withdrawals near Burbank. She compares dates to my calendar. On 2 of those days, I was in San Diego for work. She circles both and writes distance alibi. She pauses to set the frame. Forensic accounting is not magic numbers. It is a map that shows how a lie bends time and place to look straight. We will present the bends and let the court feel the strain. We break for water. The sky over the Sandias is bright and clean. Inside statements form tidy stacks. She asks if Ryan has any IP logs from the gaming platform. Not yet, I say. Requests arrive in layers. She nods and continues. By early afternoon, she has a timeline that starts in November. In November, prepaid card created and loaded from Los Angeles while I was in Oxnard. In December, a second card behaves like an echo. In late January, the gaming wallet starts to drink money in short pulls. In February, small cash withdrawals near Burbank. In March, filings begin to mention a pattern consistent with compulsive gambling. She says it out loud once. The words do not need dressing. Ryan emails a small twist. The gaming wallet sends a list of two-factor events. The temporary number was activated and deactivated several times in the same week. Carrier records tie the number to a device bought at an electronics store in Glendale. The store produces a receipt. A loyalty account was used. The name on that account is Gavin Cross. The room goes quiet in a helpful way. Dr. Shah checks my credit card for the same day. I was in Santa Clarita Coffee at 8:47, a salad place at lunch. She lines that against the prepaid vendor record. A top-up hits the gaming wallet that evening from an IP in central Los Angeles. She types narrative mask in place and keeps going. Late day, another return lands. A dining charge at a restaurant in Burbank on a night when the gaming wallet was fed. The card belongs to Gavin Cross. She marks the time. The dinner charge hits 6 minutes after a load event. She does not call it proof. She calls it proximity. Proximity can be loud if the stage is quiet. We sketch next steps, ask the electronics store to preserve any security footage. Confirm whether the loyalty account for Gavin connects to an email or number reachable by subpoena. Ask the prepaid vendors to preserve server logs for the load dates. Ask Ryan to check whether any of the IP addresses appear in other matters. Dr. Shah asks my permission to share the working timeline with Aisha so counsel stays aligned. I say yes. I text Aisha that we have a path from an anonymous number to a receipt with a name. We also set rules for what not to do. Do not confront Gavin. Do not send discoveries to Caroline outside counsel. Do not try to play detective alone. Restraint is a skill, she says, the kind that keeps good facts clean. We eat simple food at the counter. She asks about the kids without prying. I say my son is angry because anger is a shield that works until it breaks the arm that carries it. I say my daughter paints our house with empty steps. She says children read weather faster than adults. Then she says we have 1 more hour in us. In that last hour, she builds a visual. Blue ink for paychecks and ordinary spending. Green for travel that matches work. Red for loads to prepaid cards, top-ups to the gaming wallet, and cash withdrawals near Burbank. A thin black line for time. The red clusters bloom when I am far from the city. The blues and greens hum in their lane. The picture whispers in a voice a judge will hear. She proposes a report in 2 parts. Preliminary findings and pending requests. She saves a clean copy to a secure drive and prints one for my binder. Before she packs up, she asks if I slept. I say I counted the smoke detector light. She says to eat breakfast in the morning before calls, so the mind stays steady. After she leaves, the house feels like a place where work has made room for air. I text Ryan a thank you for moving quickly. I text Aisha 1 sentence. Temporary number linked to a device bought with a loyalty account under the name we discussed, dinner charge in Burbank close to a load event. She replies that she will draft a paragraph for the motion and needs scans of key pages in the morning. I clip the pages so nothing slides, write a log entry with times and items, and step onto the porch. The neighborhood settles. Dishes clink. A bicycle rattles by. I hold the day in one thought. A lie that travels through numbers still leaves footprints. Someone tried to paint me with colors that are not mine. Up close, the strokes smear. I lock the door, turn off the light, and let the house rest. Morning in Los Angeles, and I open the binder to the visitation plan. Supervised exchanges on Tuesdays and Saturdays. One weekly co-parenting class. No changes without written agreement. I message Aisha that I am back in town and on schedule. Then I head to the community center. The classroom holds a circle of plastic chairs and a whiteboard with 3 principles in tidy handwriting. Speak from I. Validate without surrender. Keep children out of adult storms. The instructor asks each of us for one recent handoff that worked. I describe tacos at a small place, a quick card game, and a quiet walk back to the porch light. She nods and writes one word on the board. Restraint. We practice a short script that is all logistics and no heat. I will pick up at 6 and return at 8. If anyone is running late, they text the attendant at the neutral site. It feels mechanical and therefore safe. During the break, a man in a Dodgers cap mutters that nothing about this is neutral. I keep my focus on the handout and say nothing. Sometimes the only win is to leave a spark without air. After class, I drive to the high school. The field smells like cut grass. Logan stands near the bleachers with his backpack low and his jaw set. He says he is skipping practice because the whispers are louder than the drills. A teammate asked if his dad was the guy from the blog. I suggest we talk to the coach so the locker room stays about football and not gossip. He looks at the gravel and says that is not how boys are built. I say coaches are built to protect practice. He says he will think about it and walks away. I watch him and remind myself that showing up without flinching is its own speech. I head to Aria's school. She slides into the car with a portfolio and the quiet energy she gets when a picture is almost finished. She pulls out a watercolor of our house with soft edges. In the foreground, a woman's hand holds a small gray rectangle that could only be a cheap flash drive. She taps the corner and says the smallest things can carry the heaviest truth. I ask if she will add anyone to the front steps. She says maybe after the next hearing. We stop for bread at a bakery. She talks about an art class that plays instrumental music and how the room feels bigger when no one is singing words. I drive her home, sign the exchange sheet, and look at the windows without letting the past climb in. 2 emails arrive that night. Aisha says the motion draft has begun using the visuals from Dr. Priya Shah. Detective Ryan Cho says initial IP logs from the gaming platform are consistent with our timeline. A 3rd message appears on the neighborhood board from Dolores Finch. A town hall at the elementary school auditorium to discuss safety and rumor without names. The comments make the topic clear anyway. The day of the meeting, I work through risk summaries that read like small weather reports. Henry thanks me for speed. Nadia messages a reminder about snacks for the status meeting later in the week, her way of keeping office life normal while the outside misbehaves. I print the visitation sheet for the next exchange and place it at the front of the binder. The auditorium is bright and smells like coffee. Folding tables hold water pitchers and a tray of leaf-shaped cookies. Dolores opens with a request that we speak as if our children are in the room. She lists truths about social media. Rumor is not accountability. Screenshots are not court. She adds that some families nearby are under temporary orders that require patience. She invites questions. A father asks why one parent would keep the house unless the other had done something wrong. Dolores looks at me without pushing. I stand and keep my voice level. Temporary orders create a holding pattern that adds structure and space. Exclusive use and possession reduces friction while the court gathers facts. None of this is permanent. I will not discuss details because my kids deserve a quiet hallway more than I deserve to be believed tonight. I can only explain the terms so the neighborhood does not panic at words. A woman in a denim jacket asks whether gambling rumors drove the decision. Allegations are not verdicts, I say, not in law and not in any place that wants to be fair. Evidence will be reviewed. In the meantime, I follow the schedule and the rules. The answer lands without polish. Flat can be honest. Another hand goes up. What does the neutral site look like, and does it frighten kids? It is a plain office with a sign-in sheet and a staff member who watches exchanges with calm attention. The waiting room has old magazines. My children walk in and out like it is a chore we all know how to do. I bring snacks that do not stain. I do not turn parking lots into stages. Some heads nod, some arms stay crossed. Dolores thanks everyone and moves to neighborhood watch scheduling. People negotiate evenings and flashlights and babysitters. The air lowers a degree. After the meeting, a father from the soccer sidelines tells me his cousin went through something like this. He says the process felt endless until suddenly it did not. He tells me not to read the blog after 10 at night. I say I have learned that lesson. He pats my shoulder in the way men do when they mean well and lack spare words. Dolores walks over with her clipboard. She hopes the agenda item did not blindside me. I say clarity helps. Better to ask questions under bright lights than whisper in dark threads. She says she once asked her son to fix a wobbly chair and he tightened the wrong bolt twice before listening. Adults are not always better. We let the laugh sit for a breath. She squeezes my elbow and reminds me the block party will happen next month when people feel capable of hot dogs again. Outside, the night smells like warm pavement. I text Aisha that the town hall caused no damage. She replies that Dr. Shah added 1 page to the visual for the filing and to check email in the morning. I text Ryan that I am free tomorrow afternoon for any signatures. He replies with a time. I drive past the high school. The field is dark. I picture Logan walking out there tomorrow, helmet low, jaw set, and a coach who says effort is a better answer than silence. At a red light, I picture Aria's painting riding beside me, the small gray drive steady in the hand that holds it. The smallest things carrying heavy truth. Back at the apartment, I log the class, the town hall, the definitions I explained, and note that travel and exchanges passed without incident. The street outside is quiet. A television murmurs behind blinds. A cat slides under a car with easy confidence. I think about a word Father Miguel likes. Dignity. Not silence and not shouting. Choosing words that do not make tomorrow harder. The meeting fixed nothing. It took the heat down by 1 number. For tonight, that is enough. I switch off the lamp and let the room settle. The hearing notice from the board sits in the front sleeve of my binder, date and room number clear as a bell. I meet Monica in the lobby of the Professional Association building. Henry arrives with a performance letter. Nadia appears with a small envelope and a steady look that says, "Team, show up." We check in past security and take our seats at a long table under a muted clock. The chair opens with the purpose of the session. Protect the public, preserve integrity. Not to judge my family case, only to decide if interim measures are needed while the courts do their work. Monica lays out our exhibits in a calm sequence. Stamped temporary orders to show context. Chain of custody receipts from the marshals in Albuquerque. A concise summary from Dr. Priya Shah that maps prepaid cards and a gaming wallet beginning last November and shows how those events landed when I was out of town. Association counsel asks direct questions. Have I ever used an online gaming wallet? No. Have I used prepaid cards outside ordinary travel? No. Do I handle client funds in my current assignment? No. Has my manager limited my tasks to avoid any perception problem? Yes. Will I submit to a focused audit of expenses? Yes. The answers line up like fence posts. The first panelist asks how I handled the neighborhood rumor. I say I did not engage online, documented the post, sent it to counsel, and kept exchanges with my children steady and on time. No public statements planned. Evidence belongs in court, not on message boards. The second panelist asks about the cash discovered in New Mexico. Monica answers that the money was surrendered as evidence verified under chain of custody held pending instruction and untouched. The third panelist asks how a gambling profile could exist if I was not doing the thing alleged. Monica explains what Dr. Shah found without adjectives. A prepaid card created in November and loaded from devices in Los Angeles while my calendar placed me in Oxnard or San Diego. A gaming wallet that started in late January with two-factor verification tied to a temporary number. That number linked to a device bought in Glendale with a loyalty account under the name Gavin Cross. Patterns, not accusations. The chair turns to Henry for his letter. He speaks in the language of operations. Years of reliable work, adherence to the 4 eyes principle for transactions, fast responses to audits, voluntary step back from any assignment touching disbursements when the family matter began. Compliance reviewed my access logs and saw no anomalies. Nadia adds a brief note about day-to-day conduct, methodical, documented, steady under stress. Monica makes the request we prepared, defer any final decision until after the family court considers our motion to vacate and until the district attorney provides an initial status update on the financial inquiry. In the meantime, impose clear conditions that protect the public. I will not handle client funds or authorize disbursements. I will complete an ethics refresher within 30 days. I will cooperate with a targeted audit of the last 12 months. I will report material developments through counsel within 24 hours. She sets each condition on the record like tools placed in order. The panel recesses. In the hallway, Nadia squeezes my elbow. Henry says the presentation stayed clean. Monica watches the clock and keeps her thoughts to herself. We return to our seats when the marshal opens the door. The chair announces the interim decision. The board will defer final action until the family court hears the motion and the district attorney issues a first status note. During the deferral, I remain licensed with restrictions. No direct handling of client funds, no disbursement approvals. Completion of the ethics module within 30 days. Cooperation with a targeted audit to begin within 2 weeks. Prompt notice of any major development. An opportunity to demonstrate ongoing integrity. The phrase lands like a door left open just enough. 2 housekeeping questions follow. Deadlines confirmed. Monica agrees. The chair asks if I have questions. I say no. The reporter closes her laptop with a quiet click and the session is over. In the lobby, Henry reminds me to send the ethics certificate when done and heads to a call. Nadia presses an empty thermos into my hand and tells me to refill it with something decent. Monica stands with me near the glass doors. Now we keep moving on the motion, she says. Scan the interim order for our file. Loop in Dr. Shah. Avoid any idea of celebration. This is a pause with guardrails, not a victory. Outside light feels cleaner than when we went in. I text Aisha a short summary and a photo of the interim order. She replies that she will update the motion draft this afternoon and copy Dr. Shah so the report can speak to a judge and to auditors. I send Henry a thank you for the letter and thank Nadia for showing up. She answers with a single word that makes me smile. Always. I walk 2 blocks to a coffee shop, order a sandwich and water, and open the binder. I write a concise log entry. Date and time. Names present. Exhibits offered. Questions asked. Conditions imposed. Action list. Complete ethics module. Cooperate with targeted audit. Keep counsel updated. Send Dr. Shah any new data from Detective Ryan Cho. The list steadies my hands. Back at the office, I forward the interim order to compliance and note the restrictions. Henry replies that workload will remain on analysis and reporting, and that he appreciates the transparency. Nadia messages a reminder about snacks for the Thursday status meeting, a small ordinary thread that keeps the day from fraying. In the evening, I make the supervised exchange on time. The kids climb into the car with the caution that comes from practice. We talk about practice and art class. I return them to the porch light at the exact minute the sheet requires. I sign, say goodnight, and walk back to the car without adding any words that could become echoes later. At home, I scan the order for Monica, file the ethics module link in my calendar, and place a fresh tab in the binder labeled Audit. The path ahead is narrow but paved, a small lane where steps are counted and recorded. I sit at the table for one more minute, let my breath even out, and then close the binder. I pulled Mom's secret files back onto the table and made space for a clean read. Photos first. Phoenix in the early 2000s, stucco buildings and gravel yards, a payphone on a hot corner. In one frame, my mother stands with a posture that looks like resolve made into bone. Another frame catches a shoulder and a badge edge, a presence kept just out of view. Dates on the backs march month by month. Nothing dramatic, all steady. Under the photos sat a clipped stack of papers, rent receipts and cash, notes in my mother's neat hand about school registrations and the names of office staff who signed transfers. Then an affidavit cover page missing the remaining pages, stamped and initialed. My mother's signature shakes slightly but presses hard as if to carve the words into the page. I read slowly. She had given a statement to federal agents about a network that used legitimate fronts to move dirty money. My father Vince tried to step away from a role he never wanted. One afternoon, a man came to the Phoenix apartment with a quiet offer. Stop returning calls from the marshals and keep silent about a back-office conversation she had overheard. And the problem would vanish. The affidavit records her answer in flat language. She refused. I could see the scene. Air heavy with heat. The smell of parking lot tar and old carpet. A man with calm hands and a watch that glinted when he moved. My mother planting her feet and letting her voice become the one she used when adults needed reminding how to act. She had chosen a statement over a bargain. The paper notes he left without raising his voice. People who promise quiet do not need to shout. At the back of the stack sat a printed email dated 2003. The header looks like the way offices looked before design became fashion. The subject line is bland. The body is not. It refers to an off-site review of accounts routed through vendors and back again to confuse origin. The sender name is Victor Cassini, a businessman known for partnerships that appear and dissolve without leaving fingerprints. My mother circled the name hard enough to dent the page and wrote 2 words. Behind Ravello. I set the papers down and let the pieces connect. Vince tried to leave a room that had no front door. My mother accepted federal help. Someone tied to Ravello's circle tried to buy silence. She gave testimony. Later, a name surfaces that sits behind the curtain. The arc explains why a network might not let go just because time passed. I moved to the living room and wrote a timeline from memory. Phoenix. The visit from the man with the quiet solution. The affidavit. WITSEC instructions. Years of ordinary life built under new names. Then my own calendar. November, when prepaid cards appear while I am out of town. January, when a gaming wallet begins to sip money. March, when temporary orders land as if a script had been rehearsed. The rhythm feels intentional, pressure without a visible hand. I called my aunt to check my memory. She said my mother had become a person who counted cars. She said Elena once told her that silence can be courage if you are silent for a good reason. She asked if I had eaten. I promised breakfast that does not come in a wrapper and hung up feeling like someone had tugged a thread through 2 decades and tied a small knot. I returned to the folder because paper steadies me. Near the back, a list in my mother's hand reads like a drill card. Speak to agent using code. Do not confirm address. Use payphone 2 blocks north. Carry only what you can explain. The last line says breathe and mean it. I traced the words with one finger and felt the simple order of a day that needed to be done right. I called Deputy United States Marshal Brooke Ellison and left a message. She returned the call within the hour. I stepped onto the small patio so my voice would not wake the building and summarized the affidavit, the 2003 email, and the circle around the Cassini name. She asked me to photograph the pages and send them to a secure address with a subject line that marked them as historical. She said legacy names often reappear in predictable ways and that documenting the path is as useful as any single piece of proof. She asked if I felt safe. Yes. Any new approaches or offers since Albuquerque? No. We let that quiet sit for a second. Then she shifted to now. There is reason to think Gavin Cross is not a freelancer, but a node, she said, a person who teaches other people how to build masks. The Glendale device receipt, the Burbank dinner charge, the temporary number that blinked on and off. Not a parade, a line. She said their office was working with the district attorney to preserve server logs and carrier data, and that patients would pay if I kept my feet in the lane. Practical next steps: scan and send the pages, keep originals flat and dry, write a short memo in my own words while memory is fresh, do not contact anyone named in the email. We both smiled at the idea that I would call a man like Cassini and ask him to confirm a 20-year-old meeting. I did what she asked. I photographed the affidavit and the email and sent them through the secure address. I wrote a memo that used plain verbs and timestamps. My mother was offered safety for silence. She refused. She gave a statement. A name surfaced behind Ravello. In my present, a smaller name moves like a hand, behind the wall building a false portrait, with prepaid cards and a gaming wallet. I kept metaphor out of the memo. Judges like the spine of a story more than its poetry. I brewed tea and stood by the sink while the kettle clicked. My mother wrote breathe and mean it for herself on a day when fear felt like a weight you carry in your lungs. I tried it. Breathe and mean it. The words did what they were built to do. Back at the table, I sorted the stack into 2 neat piles, one to remain sealed in the folder, one to scan for counsel. I texted Aisha a short line. Additional historical references including a 2003 email naming Cassini scans sent to marshals. She replied that she would add a paragraph to connect the context to our motion without turning it into a history class. She writes like a person who understands that courts like ladders with even rungs. The house was quiet in a way that felt earned. My mother had left me money and paper and a map. She had also left a reason for a network to keep a grudge. It explains why someone might be willing to create a gambling profile that fits neatly into rumor and clicks. It explains the stranger outside my building offering to fix casino debts I did not have. It explains why a loyalty account under the name we had, begun to say quietly, would be used when buying a device that powered a temporary number. I opened my notebook and wrote a single instruction in the margin. Keep the paper clean. Then I called Brooke once more to confirm receipt. She answered with the same even tone. Files received. Next step is coordination with the district attorney for subpoenas that touch the old shell company in the email and any vendors tied to that account chain. She said her office would update me when preservation notices landed. She ended the call with a line I will remember because it is both practical and kind. Patience is evidence when you can show your steps. I set the phone down and looked out at a sky that had decided to be honest. Blue without tricks. In the corner of the room, the binder waited with a new tab labeled History. I slid the folder into that sleeve and closed the cover. The day had given me context, a name that explains a posture and a path to hand. That context to people who know what to do with it. I sat back and let the room hold still long enough for the next call to find me. November rain sheets across glass and steel when the email trail shows Caroline has a consult with Gavin Cross in Seattle. I forward the thread to Deputy Marshal Brooke Ellison and Detective Ryan Cho. Brooke coordinates with the district attorney so preservation letters and any observation plans stay inside the law. Ryan readies requests for nearby businesses to hold security footage for the meeting window. Washington requires consent for recording in private spaces, so no covert audio. If anything is played, it is played with consent and documented. I call Caroline and keep it narrow. I will not approach without counsel. I ask for a short meeting in public before her appointment. I tell her there are 2 clips she should hear. One is a historical advisory that explains a tactic federal agents warned about. The other is a cleaned excerpt that may feature a voice she knows. I will bring my attorney. Any decision afterward is hers. She agrees to coffee near Pike Place. Monica and I arrive early. I text Brooke our table location and time. She replies that plainclothes will observe only entrances and exits, not words. Ryan confirms preservation notices have been delivered with deadlines. The cafe smells like espresso and rain. Monica sets her card on the table. I lay wired earbuds beside my phone and keep my hands still. Caroline arrives on the minute in a dark rain jacket. She sits, glances at Monica's card, and nods once. Monica thanks her and slides a 1-page sheet of ground rules across the table. No recording by us, consent for any audio played. Caroline controls next steps. Caroline reads and nods again. I explain the first clip, an old recording from the USB my mother kept. A federal voice describing reputational scaffolding. Fabricate a pattern, feed it with small, consistent events. Let rumor and paperwork do the rest. A gambling profile is favored because it creates shame and paper and it pressures institutions. With her permission, I play the cleaned advisory through earbuds at low volume. She listens without moving, then places the earbuds back on the table and stares a second through the window at the gray street. The second clip is her choice. Dr. Priya Shah can enhance a voicemail Caroline already has without altering content. If she consents, she can forward the file to Monica, who will send it for a one-time clean and return it in minutes. No copy kept unless Caroline decides to share it formally. If she declines, we finish our coffee and leave. Caroline scrolls her phone, finds a late January file, listens, then forwards it to Monica. Monica sends it to Dr. Shah with a simple note. Please enhance clarity and return. We sit in a small quiet while the market hums. Monica receives the file, asks if Caroline is ready, and passes the earbuds. The enhanced message is under a minute. The voice is careful. Build a profile that appears impulsive. Use prepaid instruments. Keep amounts low and steady. Create a narrative of concern that protects you. The words are calm and precise. Protect you lands like a weight. Caroline lowers the earbuds and her color drains a shade. She says Gavin presented this as a way to safeguard assets from a spouse with a risky job that judges worry about volatility, that patterns can guide them toward the C choice for children. She hears herself and goes quiet. The trap has the shape of a handrail. I keep my voice level. I am not here to accuse. I am asking her to consider that she was guided and that the guide had reasons unrelated to our family. If she wants to talk to law enforcement, Monica can make that connection now, and she will be treated as a witness, not an opponent. If she wants to speak with separate counsel first, Monica will step back. Today can end with coffee only, or it can begin a course correction that puts facts where rumor has been. Caroline asks what this means for the children if she admits she relied on advice that now sounds scripted. Monica answers that family court seeks stability. Cooperation as a witness in a financial inquiry and as a parent in a custody matter gives the court a clear picture. The aim is not humiliation. The aim is a schedule built on facts. Asking for help is a correction, not a confession. Caroline asks if she will have to face Gavin in a room. Monica says no. She will give a statement in a controlled setting, and if more is needed, it comes through counsel, not ambush. Caroline looks at the window where the rain thickens and says she will speak to someone today. She asks for names and numbers. Monica writes 2 numbers on her card: Deputy Marshal Ellison and Detective Ryan Cho. She explains briefly what each office does and offers to place the first call so Caroline does not have to narrate details on a sidewalk. Caroline asks her to call now. Monica steps outside to make the connection. I sit with Caroline. She asks about the kids. I say Logan is learning to aim his anger at things that move the ball, and Aria is painting houses whose steps look less empty. Caroline nods like that image fits. She says she believed she was protecting them. I say I believe she believed that. We both look at the earbuds like small machines that shifted the room. Monica returns. Detective Cho can meet within the hour at a nearby intake office. Deputy Ellison will be available by phone after intake. Caroline agrees. Monica offers to walk her over. Caroline asks that I wait and join later if asked. I say that is her call. They put on their jackets. Monica holds the door. Caroline steps into the drizzle with the posture of someone who has decided to move. I write a brief log entry in my notebook. Date, time, location, consent obtained, historical advisory. Played personal voicemail enhanced with consent, intent stated to speak with law enforcement, intake appointment set. I keep the language plain. I text Brooke that Caroline consented to hear both clips and is proceeding to speak with Ryan. Brooke replies received and says her office will stand by for coordination. The market noise softens to a wet hush. I finish my coffee, pay the check, and check the address Monica texted. 1 block west up a shallow hill slick with rain. I walk past stalls where vendors cover displays with plastic sheeting and families pull together under shared umbrellas. At the corner, I pause beneath an awning and watch the door to the building open and close as people go in and out on errands that matter only to them. I give Caroline 10 minutes to arrive and settle, then cross the street and step inside to wait in the lobby with my file and enough patience to let the process do its work. The receptionist seats me where the camera can see the chairs. Monica steps out once to nod that intake has started. When Detective Ryan Cho waves me in the room is a table, a recorder, and a carafe of water. Caroline sits with her hands folded, voice steady. She explains how a mutual acquaintance introduced Gavin Cross as a family finance specialist, how he framed small, controlled transactions as a way to build a narrative of safety for the children, how prepaid instruments and an online wallet would look like concern rather than conflict. She says she did not understand that someone else would be driving the pattern behind the scenes. Ryan slides an affidavit template across the table. Caroline writes in plain language and initials dates and places. Deputy Marshal Brooke Ellison joins by phone to ask 3 focused questions. Any larger organization named? Any third-party access forms? Any discouraging you from consulting an attorney? Caroline answers no, no, and yes. She forwards meeting confirmations and texts to Brooke's secure address. Ryan witnesses her signature and schedules a recorded follow-up. Caroline asks for a victim services contact and takes the card. Monica tells me quietly that Caroline has also turned over screenshots and calendar entries. Dr. Priya Shah can sync them with transaction logs. The next days move like gears catching. Preservation orders land. Carriers release records. Vendors produce logs. Dr. Shah builds a revised timeline with 2 new columns. Caroline's meetings, Gavin's travel. When prepaid loads hit, a Gavin calendar entry sits nearby. When the gaming wallet drinks money, Gavin's phone pings a Burbank tower. When a temporary number flickers on the Glendale device is active. Screenshots and logs become stepping stones. By week's end, the district attorney files a sealed complaint for fraud and obstruction tied to manipulated electronic transactions and interference with a pending proceeding. A magistrate signs a warrant. Ryan later says the arrest is quiet in a parking garage. No spectacle. Devices are seized, imaged under chain of custody. Brooke calls to confirm the handoffs and reminds me that patience and process have finally converged. Dr. Shah delivers the forensic accounting report labeled Final Findings for this phase. Timestamps cross-referenced with carrier logs and Caroline's calendar. Visuals show red clusters aligned with Gavin's movements. The narrative summary is clean. A profile of compulsion was constructed by third-party actions and timed to the petitioner's absence. No adjectives needed. Monica assembles the motion to vacate like a careful machine. The memorandum cites the standard for vacating temporary orders, when material evidence undermines the assumptions used to craft them. Exhibits are tabbed: chain of custody receipts, Caroline's affidavit, Dr. Shah's report, a certification from the district attorney regarding the ongoing financial inquiry. My declaration documenting delivery of mom's secret files without argument. We e-file on a Tuesday. 2 days later, a minute order sets a January hearing. The date looks like a door at the end of a hallway I have been walking for months. I call Logan. I tell him the court will review new information in January. He says he will be there. The word lands like a promise to himself. I call Aria. She asks if this means different steps in her paintings. Maybe steps with more people on them and less space between. She says she will bring a sketchbook and draw a ceiling that makes people feel small and safe at the same time. At the kitchen table, I open a new tab labeled Motion and file the stamped receipt, the minute order, and Dr. Shah's cover page. I write 2 short rules. Do not spike the ball. Do not let fatigue dress up as wisdom. Work acknowledges the board's interim order and my cooperation. Henry adjusts my calendar for the ethics module and the targeted audit. Nadia drops a pack of highlighters and walks away like they were always mine. Ryan calls with a spare update. Devices imaged, examinations underway, Caroline steady in a longer statement. The line from the Glendale receipt to the temporary number to the gaming wallet to the Burbank dinner invoice is a line a jury would see if it ever came to that. But family court needs only a judge and a clean record. Brooke checks on sleep and ends with the same sentence. Patience is evidence when you can show your steps. I walk until orange blossoms cut the air and a piano practice drifts from a lit window. Left hand, right hand, mistake, repeat, then a line that holds. Back home, I reread Caroline's affidavit. She believed she was building protection. She now sees she was handed a script. She wants the children to watch adults correct the path. I do not underline anything. I let the page stand. For the first time in months, the balance feels like it is tilting back toward the truth. The January date sits ahead like a steady light. January morning is cold and sharp when Monica meets me on the courthouse steps. Inside, the clerk checks us in and the judge calls the case. Logan and Aria sit in the second row, calm but alert. Caroline nods once from across the aisle. Monica opens with the record. Chain of custody receipts from the marshal's mom's secret files for context. Dr. Shah's forensic report showing prepaid cards and gaming wallets tied to Gavin's movements. Caroline's affidavit and the DA's certification. Each exhibit is clean-timed and signed. She asks the court to vacate the parts of the temporary orders built on a false narrative. I add only that I will continue co-parenting classes and keep stability for the children. Caroline stands and admits she was misled. She says she believed she was protecting her family, but now understands she was following a script. She apologizes. The judge rules portions of the temporary orders are vacated. Custody is rebalanced toward shared time. Exclusive use of the Pasadena house is rescinded. The property must be sold or restructured for the children's benefit. Co-parenting conditions remain in place. A review hearing is set in 90 days. Logan whispers he will attend the review too. Aria sketches the courthouse ceiling and smiles. Caroline and I exchange a few steady words in the hallway about keeping things practical. That afternoon, the professional board restores my license under 6 months of monitoring. Henry adjusts my workload. Nadia leaves small mercies on my desk. At home, I open an email from Dolores Finch and the parent group apologizing for spreading rumors. I log the ruling in my binder. Motion granted in part, custody adjusted house. Decision clock running, license restored, apology received. For the first time in months, the balance feels like it has returned to truth. I stand at the window and let the night come on steady. March brings back ordinary in a way I had almost forgotten. I walk into the Pacific Aegis building with a badge that works again, and a case file waiting on my desk. It is not glamorous, just a mid-sized account with risk exposures that need mapping, but the clean rhythm of numbers and timelines feels like a gift. My co-workers treat me like a man who stepped out of a storm and came back with his tie straight. Henry shakes my hand and says, "Welcome back." Nadia leaves a note on my chair that says it is good to hear your typing again. At home, the changes show in smaller, sharper ways. Logan laces his cleats and heads back to the team without me needing to ask. His coach texts that the boy plays like someone who has shed a weight. Aria tacks up a new painting in her room, the four of us standing in the yard together. No empty gap, no outline erased. Just people on grass under sky close enough to touch. The money my mother kept hidden in the attic moves into the light. After the district attorney clears it as legitimate savings, I open an education fund for Logan and Aria. I write their names on the account and let the bank clerk explain the growth schedule, even though I already know. When I sign the last form, I think about my mother's hand, making lists with words like breathe and mean it. She wanted this paper to carry us past shadows. Caroline and I meet twice a week at the neutral exchange site and keep the plan boring on purpose. We text only about schedules. We sit together at parent-teacher conferences. We stand on opposite sidelines at games without turning it into a test. The children stop flinching at the handoffs. The war ground turns into a calendar, and the calendar feels like progress. One weekend, I drive south to the cemetery where my father rests. The headstone is simple, the grass clipped short. I stand with my hands in my pockets and say what I have carried for months. Mom was right to keep the files. Her stubbornness gave me a way to step out of a trap without losing my name. Her patience gave me a script of my own, not one written by men who trade in shadows. I thank him for the lessons I took the long way around to learn. I tell him his grandchildren are finding their balance. The breeze moves through the trees like a nod. That night I sit at the kitchen table and write the last line that has been circling since Albuquerque. Mom's secret files flip the karma. It feels like both an ending and a handoff. The playbook meant to corner us has become the paper that freed us. If you are still listening to this story, I want to leave you with one question. Have you ever seen a playbook like that, a pattern designed to make you doubt yourself until the paper said otherwise? If you have, and if you found a way through it, share it. Tell the steps, the tools, the legal paths that helped. Because someone else listening tonight might need your map the way I needed my mother's. Thank you for staying with me through this long road. If this story spoke to you, hit like, share it so someone else can find it, and subscribe for more. Every story told keeps another person from believing they are alone.